As our understanding evolves, so do our norms. The 80s represented a simpler era compared to today's complexities. However, past generations' errors, some foolish and perilous, have spurred the implementation of safety regulations, amendments, and new policies aimed at safeguarding the physical, emotional, and mental well-being of the populace. Conversely, many still romanticize the 80s as a time of greater enjoyment. Despite its quirks, it was perceived as a period where one could push boundaries more freely. Activities that are now frowned upon, such as purchasing alcohol and cigarettes, albeit for your parents, of course, joyriding or exploring abandoned properties, were more socially acceptable. In an age before ubiquitous technology, life was arguably more adventurous, with children relying on outdoor play and their imagination rather than screens and consoles for entertainment. Number 1. Smoking in public places. In the 80s, while the public was aware of the health effects of smoking, the commitment to quit was not as strong, as smoking was still permitted in bars, restaurants, airplanes, and various public spaces. Despite the discomfort it caused, with the smell hitting us upon entry, social acceptance prevailed, leaving individuals with little recourse. Moving into the 90s and early 2000s, measures were taken to address the tension between smokers and non-smokers by introducing designated smoking and non-smoking sections. However, the pervasive smell proved challenging to eradicate from walls, floors, ceilings, and other porous materials. Notably, on February 25, 1990, smoking was banned on airplanes, and in the late 90s and early 2000s, similar bans were enforced in restaurants. Despite these strides, the lingering scent of cigarette smoke persists in older homes and buildings today. The challenge of eliminating the odor entirely reflects the deep-seated impact of years of smoking in public places. While significant progress has been made in restricting smoking, the remnants of this once widespread practice continue to linger in our shared spaces. Number 2. Sports teams' names, Redskins and Blackhawks. The use of names like Redskins for the Washington State football team was once accepted without much question. However, with the rise of protests against racism, such names are now scrutinized as potential forms of racial insensitivity. The controversy primarily revolves around how the term Redskins can be offensive to Native Americans, while some argue that it's merely a label for a sports team. In response to the growing concerns and public sentiment, the team decided to change its name to the Washington football team, stepping away from the potentially offensive connotations. While some critics may be disappointed with the less colorful name, no pun intended, the change aimed to avoid causing offense to any particular group. This renaming process highlights the evolving awareness surrounding cultural sensitivity in sports team names. The shift away from potentially offensive terms reflects a broader societal conversation about inclusivity and respect. The Washington football team's decision to adapt its name is a step towards fostering an environment where sports teams can be universally enjoyed without perpetuating stereotypes or causing harm. Number 3. Discrimination and racial profiling. In the 80s, workplaces, movies, and the general public lacked the diversity we see today. While it was always illegal to discriminate based on factors such as age, gender, sexual orientation, and race, minority groups faced greater challenges in being respected and heard. Instances of discrimination, such as bias against gay men with HIV or AIDS, significant wage gaps among different demographics, and racial profiling of individuals wearing hoodies, were unfortunately prevalent. Although these practices were inherently unjust, significant progress has been made since then. Thanks to various factors, including peaceful protests, gay rights parades, influential figures like Cyndi Lauper, and increased commercial involvement, discrimination and racial profiling have seen a substantial reduction. However, it's important to acknowledge that the battle is not fully won. These issues persist in many workplaces, within law enforcement, on social media, and in the general public. While there have been positive strides, it is essential to remain vigilant and continue addressing these challenges. Ongoing efforts are necessary to create a society where discrimination and racial profiling are truly things of the past. Number 4. Spanking kids. In the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even 90s, most kids were spanked or even whipped by the belt if they talked back or lied about something. Back then, most people saw it as a regular part of parenting, But today, it's highly advised to avoid causing any physical harm to your child. According to the latest research, striking your kids increases their chance of becoming more aggressive as an adult, even physically abusive. While many parents today still use this method of punishment, most are more likely to smoke and drink. Scientists believe it serves as more of a vindictive release for the parent, but it actually creates more problems for the children. In some situations, parents are even bullying their children as they take advantage of their smaller size. Thankfully, many parents today understand the consequences of striking their kids, which is why they put them in timeout and talk to them afterwards instead. Number 5. Not wearing a seatbelt. In the 80s, before comprehensive tests and studies on the risks of not wearing a seatbelt were completed, the act of buckling up was more of a suggestion than a requirement. It was not unusual to witness scenes of children playing in the back of a station wagon or lounging on the car floor while dad cruised down the highway at 60 to 70 miles per hour. Many drivers and passengers, particularly the younger generation, viewed seatbelt use as inconvenient or uncomfortable. However, as soon as the public became aware of the life-saving potential, it swiftly transitioned from a recommendation to a legal mandate. This evolution in attitudes towards seatbelt usage is mirrored in the regulations concerning children riding in the front seat. Over time, legislation has become increasingly stringent on child safety, specifying that any child under the age of 8 or under 4'9" tall must be securely fastened in an appropriate car seat. Failure to adhere to this rule carries the consequence of a substantial ticket or fine. Number 6. Live animals in circuses. In the past, live animals in circuses were a source of entertainment that few questioned. Parents enjoyed taking their kids to witness elephants walking on hind legs, tigers leaping through rings of fire, and daring ringmasters putting their heads into lions' mouths. However, with the rise of social media, particularly platforms like YouTube, the public quickly became aware of the dark side of these performances. As people started sharing and witnessing instances of animal abuse involving whips, tight collars, muzzles, electric prods, bullhooks, and other painful tools, public sentiment shifted. Animal rights advocates took a stand against these practices, determined to end the mistreatment of animals in circuses. Today, the use of live animals in circuses, especially elephants, has significantly decreased. Laws governing their use vary from state to state, with regulations dictating the conditions and extent to which animals can be employed in such performances. Simultaneously, there is a growing movement advocating for a complete ban on the use of live animals in circuses, leading to the introduction of new legislation aimed at outlawing these practices. Number 7. Legally drinking at 18 in some states. Following the ratification of the 21st Amendment in December 1933, most states aligned their legal drinking ages with the voting age, which was 21 at the time. However, between 1969 and 1976, some states opted to lower the drinking age to 18, coinciding with the lowering of the voting age to 18 in 1971. This shift prompted several more states to follow suit and lower their minimum drinking age during the period of 1972 to 73. The trend took a turn in response to an increase in drunk driving fatalities. Between 1976 and 1983, recognizing the concerning rise in accidents, several states took voluntary measures to raise their purchase ages to 19. The move aimed at addressing the public safety implications associated with a younger legal drinking age. In 1984, the US Congress intervened with the National Minimum Drinking Age Act, mandating that all states raise their minimum age for the purchase and possession of alcohol to 21 by October 1986. To enforce compliance, states faced the risk of losing 10% of their federal highway funds. By 1988, all 50 states and the District of Columbia had uniformly raised their legal drinking ages to 21, bringing about a nationwide standard in an effort to curb the negative consequences associated with underage drinking. Number 8. Levels of pollution. The Environmental Protection Agency reports a significant decline in pollution levels from 1980 to 2019. Improvements in key factors such as vehicle miles traveled, fuel consumption, technological advancements, and industrial activity have contributed to this positive trend. Detailed graphs provided by the Environmental Protection Agency showcase reductions in various pollutants, including air quality, carbon monoxide, lead, nitrogen, ozone, particulate matter, and sulfur dioxide since 1980. While the data indicates an overall improvement in pollution levels, it is unfortunate that the consequences of past decades, particularly the 80s, are manifesting now. Issues such as glacier melting, rising ocean levels, threats to wildlife, and increased flooding underscore the long-lasting impact of historical pollution. Nevertheless, there is a silver lining. The increased awareness of our economic footprint has prompted substantial efforts towards becoming more eco-friendly. This heightened consciousness is a positive step toward mitigating the long-term effects of past pollution and fostering a more sustainable and environmentally responsible future.